Hello and welcome to the Prepare to Prosper podcast, where we prepare today, prosper tomorrow. This is episode 11, and we're going to be discussing heat and like how to stay warm and those kind of things. Last week we discussed power. Next week is health, and that will finish up the all of our survival needs. So first off, for heat, staying warm and stuff like that, have the clothing you need to stay warm with you. A lot of people nowadays I get in the car that's in the heated garage, drive to work, and the only time I get cold is when I walk across the parking lot into work. Well, that's fine if you don't want to wear a coat, but you should probably throw a coat and some blankets and that kind of stuff in your car in case you need them. Waterproof jackets, that kind of stuff. To go along with that, in case you got change a flat tire or get stuck in a ditch, something like that. We're going to go over that when we get to the bug out bag kind of stuff, some clothing things. But that's the primary thing, is I see way too many people not dressed warmly because they don't get cold, so they just don't bring cold weather clothing with them ever. And you're most likely to need things in the short term stuff. Long term, end of the world stuff doesn't happen very often. Well, it never happens because it's never been the end of the world. But flat tires and getting stuck in ditches, that happens to people all the time. So we should be prepared to deal with those kind of stuff first. And then for being able to produce heat, make fire and stuff like that in emergencies is important. You gotta practice it. But carrying a lighter, a ferrocerium rod, that's those man-made flint and steel things, if you're not familiar with them, and carrying tinder with you everywhere you go. Having those three things on your person, or let's be real, you don't really need to carry those kind of things on your person all the time, every day, if you don't live the lifestyle where you're likely to have that happen. But have them in a backpack, in a little fire kit or something like that in your backpack, in case you run into those emergencies. Is really nice to have. And that's like your everyday carry bag that goes with you everywhere you go. Like, I don't carry my everyday carry bag with me into restaurants and into Walmart, but it is in the car while I'm doing that. It's in the car while I'm at work, so if I need those things, they're really nearby. So we already discussed it a little bit. Excuse me, but cold weather clothing, waterproof clothing, and windproof clothing are great to have in car kits and in our bug out bags. So for the windproof stuff and waterproof stuff, I prefer to do lots of layers. I don't want like an insulated and waterproofed snowsuit, snow pants, and snow winter coat for snow. I have those things. The coat was given to me issued to me by the Air Force, and the matching pants were given to me by a coworker. So I have that. I throw them in my car. They're nice to have. But what I prefer to have and use more often is to have multiple layers of warm clothing, and then that outer layer be waterproof and windproof. So if I want to take out some of the insulation, I can. And we'll work our way through. So we started with the outer layer. I like ponchos. They're not as good for working in. So around the homestead, you don't really want a poncho all the time. But they're really good for bug out bags and camping and stuff like that, because they can also become your shelter. And I'm going to do some videos on the YouTube side of things on that later. Building shelters out of ponchos and stuff like that. I got some tarp shelter videos and some trash bag videos. Trash bag shelters. I need to make some poncho videos. But anyway, so that's your outer layer. Your next layer comes warming layer. Wool and fleece and stuff like that. You want to avoid cotton because cotton absorbs water really quickly and gets wet from leaving a little bit of sweat or a little bit of rain that might make it through your raincoat, and then you get wet and lose a lot of your heat really quickly. So you want to avoid cotton if you can. And then the layer closest to your skin should be a wicking layer, something like Under Armour or even old school polypropylene. Long Johns work well. And like I said, multiple layers of that stuff. So you can pick and choose what you need for that weather. And pick what's appropriate for the kind of weather you have. If you live in Florida, you don't need as much warm clothing. But if you live in like Montana, you're going to need more than I need here in Indiana. Also, lots of extra socks and lots of extra underwear and bug out bags. They're good to have in the summer, good to have in the winter. You got to keep those parts dry and clean, or else you're really susceptible to getting cold and getting infections. You don't want to rash during the apocalypse. Alright, so we're going to talk about our house next. So the first thing we got to do with our house is find and fix drafts. You can do that by walking around and feeling for them, but they make those little temperature sensor things. They look like guns. People use them to check everybody's temperature during the pandemic. You can buy those at Harbor Freight or off of Amazon pretty cheap. EOTech City makes a really good affordable one on Amazon. I'll try to put a link in the description for those. But you can just walk around and scan random things. Give them to your kids and tell them to have fun. And just look for any place that's cold in the winter, or if it's winter, you know, look for cold places. If it's hot out and you're running your air conditioner, look for warm places. And then you could also go on the outside of your house and walk around and shoot things and look for where your air conditioning's leaking out or where your heat's leaking out, depending on what time of year it is. If you're smart enough to be watching this video, I assume you're smart enough to know when it's hot and cold and what the difference is. But yeah, look for any weird spots, and then look to fix those drafts or insulation, add insulation, stuff like that. Around windows and doors and around outlets and light switches are common. And light switches and outlets are pretty common to have drafts around them because we don't put as much insulation around those for when they put the electrical boxes in. And then, of course, fix those things. So now that we got rid of a lot of the drafts, it'll save us money in electrical bills and all those kind of things. And it'll also make it easier to heat in an emergency. So also look into getting better insulation and better windows. Those are expensive, but I have to mention them. They're good to have. We need to get better windows eventually. So one of the things you want to remember to do if you for some reason can't heat your house in the winter is the smaller and this goes for bug out bags and stuff too in shorter emergency situations like those, the less air you have to heat up with body heat, the easier it is to stay warm. So you want to build your emergency survival shelters as small as you can. Well, if your furnace goes out in the middle of the winter and you can't get it repaired right away, or there's a power outage or anything like that, and you gotta keep warm inside your house. I mentioned this in the power video. Take all the blankets and pillows and mattresses in your house and build like a little pillow fort. I've also heard of people setting up a tent in their yard or in their house, like in the living room, and covering it with blankets so it's easier to stay warm. Either one of those works great. I'd rather set up the pillow fort, and you make it into a game with the kids. And then also smaller heaters. You can get the small ventless heaters and put them in like a couple of rooms, your bedroom, living room maybe, and use those regularly as just to warm cold spots in your house, and have those plumbed in either professionally or do it yourself if you're capable of doing that. And that way you have them as the heat source all the time. Or use little buddy heaters, and you can use small propane tanks with those, or you can use like barbecue grill propane tanks with an adapter and a hose. That's how I heated the RV for an entire winter when I lived in it. Now, you're not supposed to run them with the tank, with the big 20-pound, the big barbecue tanks indoors with them. But they're worried about leaks and having that much propane next to the heater. Like, I've done it. Do it at your own risk. After I put the bigger heater in, though, I did plumb that and put the bigger heater in the RV. I did plumb that outside, but that's so I could use bigger propane tanks and didn't have to change. I bought one of the I think they're 100-pound tanks. They're about 4 feet tall or so. But those were great for storing or for heating, the little buddy heaters. And we're going to plumb them in. Just have a little piece of black pipe sticking out of the corner in probably the living room and me and Sarah's bedroom. And then we can run a rubber hose from there, the propane hoses from there to that heater if we need to use it in an emergency. And that way we can leave the big propane tanks outside and store propane. And so I have a propane smoker. We need to use it more often, but that justifies having the expense of the propane. Propane barbecue grills are great. A lot of people don't like them because they don't taste as good as charcoal, and I agree, charcoal tastes better. But having a propane grill is kind of nice because you can just go outside and cook real quick on it, and you don't heat up your house when you have air conditioning, and you don't have to get the coals ready and start. You just turn it on. It starts just like your stove. Grill up some burgers, come inside, maybe grill up some chicken or something, come inside, eat, and that way you're not heating up your house and running up your your electric bill to air condition your house every time you cook. And that'll get you having the propane tanks. Propane pretty much lasts forever. If you can keep the tanks out of the rain, that's ideal, so they don't rust. That's all you got to worry about with them. Next is if your furnace goes out, it'd be nice to have a generator that can run your furnace. Me and Sarah have a small generator. We have a really small generator, and then we have a small generator that can run the refrigerators and anything we need to run. It won't run the air conditioner and the furnace, though. If you can afford it, buy a bigger furnace. And like I talked about in the last video about storing gasoline, fill up a 5-gallon gas can every month or every other month. And then once you have, 5 or 6 or 12 cans of gas, it's been a year, instead of storing another gas can, just take the January's gas can, dump it in your car when you fill up, and fill that back up. And now you're not, you don't have to worry about stabilizing the gas. It's only a year old. Your old gas is fine. And then you can run that in your generator. If you have a generator big enough to run your furnace. A lot of them gobble a lot of energy to run that blower. More than they actually need. Alright, something me and Sarah want to do this summer, hopefully, is get a wood stove installed. Unfortunately, I have to say get because for 2 reasons. One, the insurance company requires us to have it professionally installed. So before you get one, call your insurance company. Make sure it doesn't void your insurance. And then the other reason I say we're going to get it installed, we're going to do all the prep work. We're going to stuff for the floor and the walls so that it's safe to put in the house. But the penetration through the roof, we're going to have a professional come in and do that. That way if we have any water leaks or any problems with it, they did it and they have to fix it. So that's a little tip there. I like doing things on my own and making and building as much stuff as I can, but I don't really like the idea of cutting a hole in the roof unless I absolutely have to, because I want water outside my house, not inside the house. But wood stoves are great, and then for backup heat and for supplemental heat, and in some situations they're good for your primary source of heat. That's something you're going to have to decide because everybody's life is different. I'd love to run it as primary heat, but it's probably just going to be a supplemental heat and an emergency heat source for us. So your homework and my homework, both are the same homework, is to get one of those temperature guns and go around the house and look for all the drafts and any place we can fix to make our house more efficient, and make that list so we can start working on that list. Don't forget to do your other homework. Don't just be making lists. I have this problem too. Making lists and then not checking the stuff off the list and actually doing it. It'd be a good idea to find people to help hold you accountable and help you hold them accountable. In a later video, a later podcast episode, we are going to be discussing preparedness groups. And tomorrow, my preparedness group is going to actually be discussing goal setting and teamwork and stuff like that. I'll try to make a YouTube video describing how to do that coming up. And I'll do some talking about groups and stuff too. Anyway, that's all I have for this week. Don't forget your homework, and don't forget to actually fix the leaks that you find. I hope you have a great week. And remember, we prepare today to prosper tomorrow.